Hey everybody, welcome to Paranormal Zone TV. Do you believe? Thanks so much for joining us tonight. For those who may be new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd appreciate it. And please don't forget to give the show a like. I have an awesome guest tonight. It's Jason Offutt. His website is jasonoffutt.com, and I believe this is 3 or 4 times that Jason's been on the show, and I'm so happy to have him, thrilled to have him back. Jason is an author and a writer, and he has some awesome books. And actually, if you Google Jason Offutt, you'll find all kinds of articles that he has written on the web search. So everybody, let's welcome Jason to the show. Hey, Jason, thanks for joining us tonight.
Well, thanks for having me back. That's something I'm always happy about is when I get invited back on a show at least 2 or 3 times, because that means I haven't ticked anybody off too much.
No, you're an awesome storyteller, and I want to show them your book. This is Jason's book, Haunted Missouri, and that's what we're going to be talking about. Some of the ghost stories that are in this book, and you can purchase this book on his website. All right, Jason. So I picked out about, I think, 6 or 7 of them. We'll try and keep this an hour because I know you have a young family and you have to get back to them. Let's first start with I have to apologize, everybody. My printer broke, and I did get a new printer, but I didn't have time to print off my notes. So, and Jason wrote the book. He has all the information on these stories, so I'm going to rely on Jason. It's all yours. You got the whole show, Jason. So tonight, all right, we're going to start with Lymph Mansion, and I love this story. So let's talk. Go ahead and talk about it.
Well, yeah, the Lymph Mansion. It was voted. I'm trying to think of when it was. It was on a USA Today poll. The very first time I heard of it. Back in the mid to late 80s, I think, the Lymph Mansion was voted one of the top 10 most haunted places in the country. Back in the 1800s, an immigrant to this country, I believe his first name was William Lemp, Lemp, immigrated here from Europe, and he tried his hand at groceries and a few other things, and then did what he really knew how to do, which was brew beer. And he founded the Lemp Brewing Company in St. Louis. And for a while, it was a rival to Anheuser-Busch. It was really big, but so they had money rolling in. They built this mansion fairly close to the brewing area. It's still close to actually where Anheuser-Busch is, but when Prohibition hit, Anheuser-Busch figured out, and other brewing companies around the country, like Miller and Pabst, they figured out how to deal with Prohibition. They sold milk, or made furniture, or produced food to pull in the slack. But the Lemp Brewing Company, the management couldn't figure out what to do, and it went under. This, of course, caused a lot of problems with the Lemp family. And when the father passed away, things went downhill. There were 3 suicides in the building. One being his son, Charles Lemp, who probably was suffering from depression, but they didn't know what that was back in the early 1900s. So he couldn't take it anymore. His life was horrible, so he decided to end it all. The one problem was he had a dog that he loved, and everybody else hated it. And he didn't want his beloved Doberman Pinscher to be mistreated or not cared for. So, well, he shot it in the head.
What?
Then he killed himself. So that was, one of the first suicides. And there were a couple more. Another brother killed himself, and I believe it was a nephew sometime later. And there were a couple of other deaths in the family. Another family member and a young servant was also killed there. And it changed hands a few times. It became a poorhouse for a while. somebody bought it about 20 years ago and turned it into a bed and breakfast, which I believe it still is. But people still report, people who were there. When it was a poorhouse, people would report seeing a black shadowy figure in a hall at night, wearing a top hat and a cape and a walking stick, which was the description of Charles Limp, the man who killed his dog and himself. When it became a bed and breakfast, people started reporting hearing dogs barking inside the building, and no pets have been allowed there. They also heard the click of nails, from a dog's paw, clicking across hardwood floors where there were now rugs in the rooms. So I mean that was a little bit creepy, and they've been holding ghost tours there for years. But the day I went, generally when I go to a haunted spot, nothing happens, nothing paranormal happens, because ghosts are jerks like that. Yeah. Generally, if you go looking for something, it doesn't appear. But anyway, the day I went, I had a good friend from high school who lives in St. Louis, and he and his wife came with me. And it was in the summer, and it was really super hot. And I didn't tell them anything about the ghost story. They just wanted to go in the mansion because they'd been by it before. So we went in, and they waited downstairs while I went and roamed the building. And I was up on the third floor where the servants' quarters used to be. And it was, at the time, I don't know what it's like now because this has been a few years ago. At the time, it was unfinished, and it was hot. There was no air conditioning whatsoever. Like I said, it was summer, so I was sweating buckets as I was walking through the upstairs, snapping pictures. And all of a sudden, in this hallway, I stepped into a spot that was so cold. I immediately stopped sweating, and goose flesh grew on my arms. And I stood there for a few seconds and thought, wow, this might be a ghost. Because what else could it have been? I was just all of a sudden really hot, and then boom, really cold. Well, I stepped backward, and it was hot again. I started sweating. Stepped forward, and it was freezing cold again. Well, I took a step forward out of that, and it was hot. Then I stepped back, cold, forward, hot, back, cold, forward, hot, and eventually the cold spot wasn't there anymore. Mm-hmm. There was absolutely no way that it was an air conditioning leak from the floor below it. I stepped into something which, to this day, that's one of the coolest paranormal things that's ever happened to me. But when I went to leave, I went downstairs and got my friends, and they hadn't really talked to anybody. They just wandered around and admired the pretty building. And I asked, I said, hey, how was everything? And my friend's wife said, well, I was just standing here, and she was wearing shorts again because it was summer. I was just standing here, and a dog brushed up against my leg, and the weirdest thing was I looked down, and there was no dog. So I'm not sure what I encountered upstairs, but she encountered the beloved Doberman Pinscher of Charles Limp.
Wow. Now, I do remember when I was typing up my notes that I don't have, there was a child born, and they called it Monkey Face.
Monkey Face?
Oh, you don't know about that?
I don't remember that at all.
One of the Limps had a child. I don't know if it was the father, but one of the Limps, it could have been the father, had the baby was Down syndrome. And they called it Monkey Face, and I have a picture of the the attic where they kept it. They hid the baby. They hid the child away, never to be found. No one ever saw him, and they hid the baby away. I don't know any more about it. I don't know how long the child lived or whatever. But yeah, and it was to have a mentally retarded child in those days, I mean, is unheard of. It wasn't acceptable at all. And so they hid this child away in the attic.
Well, that's where I was when I stepped into the cold spot. Interesting.
Were you in the attic?
Yeah, that was the third floor. There wasn't anything higher than that.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, Well, anyway, So, yeah, and I know that family, it was tragic, tragic. And then um, one of them was having an affair. I'm not sure if maybe that's where that baby came from. One of the Limps was having an affair with another woman, and he couldn't stand. I think his wife was Lilith or Lillian. He couldn't stand it anymore because she was so squeaky clean and perfect. He couldn't stand it anymore. He had this affair, and maybe that's where that baby came from.
Maybe interesting. I didn't get into the dirty laundry of the Limps.
Oh, that's the best part. Are you kidding? That's the best part. Oh, okay. And today, what? It's a bed and breakfast. You said today.
Yes.
Okay. And the Hauntings. I know it's really well known for its hauntings.
Right, and it's been a few years since I've been there, and they used to have regular ghost tours there, and it was pretty popular for that. Someone had even decorated the third floor with paintings on the walls saying "Get out, you are not welcome." But of course, that was all for the ghost tours.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay, is there anything else you want to talk about at the Limp Mansion?
Well, I mean, there are stories about caves underneath, and booze being hidden down there, and someone dying down in the caves. But in that entire part of the state, there are caves everywhere, and stories like that. So, and they're pretty easy to come across.
Yeah. All right. So the next one, I imagine, was that in your book, The Limp Mansion?
Yeah, it sure was.
Okay. And okay, now this one, I never heard of this before. The Mark Twain Cave. Never. That's the first time. So tell us.
You never had to read Tom Sawyer?
No.
No. Okay. Well, even if wasn't Mickey Rooney in The Adventures of Tom Sawyer?
Yes, I saw the movie.
Right. Well, when he and Becky Thatcher were lost in the cave, that was Mark Twain wrote about that cave.
Oh.
All right. So Hannibal. That was, I mean, of course, much smaller than in Mark Twain's days than it is now. But the cave now is in the city limits. Back then, it was a few miles outside of the city. It was discovered in the early 1800s by a person, the landowner, out hunting, and he chased a bobcat into a hole. And his dog chased the bobcat in the hole, and the dog went in the hole, and he got other people to come and widen the hole so they could get in to get his dog out, and then they discovered this cave system, and of course I've been in there, and it's absolutely beautiful. But they got the dog out, and the townspeople started going and visiting, and eventually the person started charging money for people to come in to see the cave, and then later the thing changed owners, and people almost forgot about it, except for the kids in the town, because it's a cave. What kid's not going to want to go crawl around someplace he's not supposed to? But I'm going to pause that and get right back to it.
All right.
Because the cave, people outside of Hannibal didn't know about it. One of them being a surgeon from St. Louis, and he was looking for a method. He was experimenting on a method of perfectly preserving a human body. And a couple of the things he needed was a place that had constant temperature throughout the entire year and constant humidity. And the Mark Twain Cave had that. So he bought it. And the next thing he needed was a corpse to experiment on. And just so happened his 14-year-old daughter died. And he decided to experiment on her. Okay, this is getting creepy. We haven't even talked about ghosts. So he took her and he put her in a glass-lined copper cylinder and then filled it with liquid, alcohol, and it's a cocktail of chemicals, and had her transported to Hannibal and had the canister suspended from the roof of one of the rooms in the cave system. And Mark Twain even wrote about this in his book, Life on the Mississippi, that the kids from Hannibal, despite the fact that their parents told them not to, would go to the cave, and the older ones, with their lanterns and torches, would lead the younger kids through the cave system, telling ghost stories, and they ended up in the room with the surgeon's daughter. And right at the height of the storytelling, right when it was just getting the creepiest, one of the older kids, the oldest ones, would unscrew the lid of the cylinder, reach in, and pull the girl's head out by the hair.
Oh my God.
And of course, everybody, all the little kids, would scream and run out of the cave. What a great joke! Twain in his book said that he was never part of that, but okay, I'm not going to believe it. But anyway, the parents in Hannibal were they finally got sick of it, and petitioned the doctor to remove his daughter, which he did. He removed his daughter and had her buried in the family plot in St. Louis. Later, I believe it was in the late 60s, the cave became a show cave because the state realized what sort of cultural importance it had. Not only was it featured in Mark Twain's book, by the way, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, published in 1877, was the first book to be written on a typewriter. But anyway, so they, not just because of that, but because of everybody who'd been in that cave at one point had signed their name. There were signatures from Civil War soldiers from the North and the South in there. There was just random graffiti. And Jesse James' signature is on a wall in there, and it has been authenticated that it was his. He was in there. So for these reasons, it was turned into a show cave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, Jesse James, I'm showing them the picture of they have a plaque there saying Jesse James hideout. Did he actually hide out in this cave?
That's why he was there.
Oh, he was How did he find the cave? Wow. And you know what? There's another picture, too, that I was able to find of the Devil's Backbone. What's that all about?
Was that in Hannibal? No, that's in the cave.
Yeah, it's in the cave.
Yeah. Well, there are all sorts of different rooms in the cave with all sorts of different names. They're just called that by the way they look, by some feature in the cave.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Is the cave actually haunted?
Yes. After it became a show cave, the state took it over and they started running tours through it and talking about its history. People started reporting a ghost. It was a person who's just started appearing with a tour group, and the tour guide wouldn't have seen this person to start with, and when the tour was over, the person would be gone. There were a number of times that the cave was searched looking for that person, and it was always the same type of person, a young teenage girl with blonde hair.
Really?
And one guy I interviewed, who was a tour guide for a very short period of time, told me that he was showing people around, and this girl showed up, and he said she was being really obnoxious. She kept peeking over people's shoulders at him and grinning, and it was kind of getting on his nerves. But near the end of the tour, when they were close to the exit, he was ushering people through to the exit, and this girl turned and walked the opposite way, and this really upset him. So he told everybody to keep going toward the exit, and he went and followed this girl, and she led him all the way back to the room where the surgeon had his daughter hanging, and she stopped near the back wall of that room, and he said, "You got to come with me," and she smiled and turned around and walked through the wall and disappeared.
Oh.
And this, of course, unnerved him. And then when he went into the, went and talked to his supervisor and told her the story, she showed him a picture of the surgeon's daughter, and he said, "Oh my God, that was her. This is the girl I saw in the cave."
Oh wow! Oh my God! Really, the daughter?
Right. And he didn't work there much longer.
Oh, wow. Isn't there another story connected to that cave? Is it the Lover's Leap to Indian?
There is. It's not necessarily connected to the cave. It's connected to Hannibal.
Oh, okay.
Right, and those. I mean, I don't put any stock in those stories at all because there are similar stories all across the country. As a matter of fact, there's a light south of Joplin, Missouri, called the Hornet Spook Light, and it has been seen since before white settlers came into the area, and it's still seen today. But the light, the excuse given for the light, is the same as the Lover's Leap in Hannibal. These two Native American tribesmen from that area. One young woman, one young man had fallen in love, and the parents didn't agree with them being together, and they jumped off a cliff and died. And one of them wanders looking for the other. One spirit wanders looking for the other one.
Yeah,
that's just a really common story.
Yeah, I have a picture of that. The view of where they would have jumped off of. Okay, so other than the little girl that haunts that cave, is there anybody else? What about Mark Twain himself, or what about Jesse James?
No, I think they've got other places to haunt.
Oh,
Jesse, for one, I don't know. I've never heard of a Mark Twain ghost story before.
Oh, that's interesting.
He was fairly agnostic from what I've read, and maybe he, when he passed, he found out, hey, things aren't what I thought they were. I kind of like it here.
Oh, maybe.
Maybe.
All right. So, now let's see. What's the next one? Okay. So the next one is this Workman Chapel. I never heard of this either.
Well, this, it's most of the stuff you'll read online is urban legend. It was founded in, I believe, 1901, 1903, something around there. I can't remember.
1901.
By John Workman. He was a pastor. It's in rural Nottoway County, Missouri, which is up in the far northwest corner, almost to Iowa. And anyway, he founded this church and was a pastor there for about, 40, 50 years. Then the church fell into disrepair because after the founder had passed away, people had begun already, selling their farms, moving to towns, and there weren't enough people there to maintain a weekly church. So it's been abandoned, and of course it became. There's a cemetery right on the grounds, and it became a place for high school kids and college kids. There's a university in the town right next to it, which I teach at that university, so it's Workman Chapel's about 15 minutes from here. Anyway, the urban legends with the chapel are that the pastor had killed some woman and hidden a knife underneath the floorboard of the church, which is absolutely ridiculous. None of that happened. But most of the floorboards are ripped out of the floor of the church from people looking for it.
Oh.
And another urban legend is that if you park under the biggest tree beside the church and just wait, you'll hear the heels or the toes of the boots of people who were hanged from that tree scraping along the top of the car. You
mean there was a hangman's tree on that property?
No, but that's the urban legend part of it.
Oh.
It makes for a good story when high school or college kids go out there to get spooked and the wind brushes the untrimmed branches back and forth on the top of their car.
Oh yeah, that sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
However, all of that said, I've been out there. Matter of fact, I used to take freshmen out there on field trips to do a ghost hunt. I made sure they researched all the local history before we, went on a ghost hunt. But it was still a cool field trip. But there are some ghost stories out there that have some validity. There was there are two Civil War soldiers buried out there. We can find the tombstones. It's written on them or carved on them that they served in the Civil War. And people have reported seeing Civil War soldiers on horseback riding around in the cornfields that surround the cemetery. I interviewed a former student who was out there one day. Her and a friend were going to go at the cemetery at night, but they wanted to go out during the day to make sure they knew where all the trippable places were in case they got scared and decided to run.
Yeah.
Which is always a wise thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
But she'd taken her dog, and they were out in the cemetery just walking around looking at things, and the dog was bouncing around barking and getting all excited, and all of a sudden it stopped and its ears went back, and she was like wondering what happened, what was going on with the dog, and then she heard and her friend both heard what sounded like hoof prints, galloping, and they came from far away, and they got closer and closer and closer and closer, and then they went by, and as they went by, she said the dog's eyes were following it, but when it went by, she said she even felt a breeze, as if something had just rushed by her, and then the hoof prints, the sound got softer and softer and softer, and eventually it was gone, and when it was gone, the dog got all excited again. Started playfully acting like a dog.
Wow. Is this a location for heavy paranormal investigations where these groups go out there? Are they gathering a lot of information, any evidence that you know of?
Well, the only evidence that I have been a party to, there were. I wish you would have mentioned this. I would have sent you a picture to show. I don't have a physical copy, or I'd hold it up. It's on my computer. I had a reporter from the student paper come with me. And when I took the freshmen out on a field trip, and near the end of the night, two things happened. One, about halfway through the evening, he put an audio recorder in the middle of the cemetery. And everybody went into the chapel for the rest of the night to, take EVPs and readings and stuff. And then he went and got his recorder and he played it. And much like the girl and her dog, on his audio recording was the sound of a horse gallop, getting louder and louder and louder and louder, and then quieter and quieter and quieter and quieter.
Wow.
Which was really cool, but.
Yeah.
Then when we were getting ready to leave, there was a girl standing with a camera, and I was standing next to the reporter, and he took his camera and pointed toward her and fired off 3 quick shots. It was click, click, click. And, then he showed them to me because he was freaked out. The very first picture was normal. The third picture was normal. The middle picture showed a white ribbon that wound its way around this girl.
You know what? I think I saw that picture on the web when doing my search. It must have been your pictures.
I put it on the web at one point. The girl was probably wearing green.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, had I known those were yours, I would have put them into the show. Oh. Okay.
Yeah, but I couldn't explain that. And I showed it to some photo experts, and they're like, I don't know what that is because. Whatever this white stripe is, it goes.
Well, it's an energy light. It's called energy light. They call it energy light. Oh,
Yeah, but those are the two things personally that had happened to me while I was out there, or at least that I was privy to while I was out there. Now, I have one more small story about it.
Yeah. Which
is pretty fun. I was contacted by the mom of a teenage girl. She's probably in college or out of college by now, but at the time she was like 14 or 15. And the mom and another mom had taken like 5 of these girls, 14 or 15-year-old girls, out to work the chapel because they wanted to get a good scare. And on the way out to the chapel, they brought the movie The Exorcism of Emily Rose and put it in the DVD player. And they were in the back 2 seats of this enormous SUV watching this movie. And they pulled up into the chapel, it's way out in the country. And the girls promised, and the moms verified this, that they removed the disc from the DVD player because they figured they weren't going to be in any mood to watch it on the way home, and put it in the case. Okay, so the mom said that they let the girls out to go scare themselves in the cemetery, while the mom sat in the car. They weren't getting out. They didn't want to get out for anything. Well, in a little bit, they heard the girls scream, and they all ran back to the car, and they were like, we gotta go now. So they got in the car, all buckled up, and the driver put the car in reverse, and it's got the camera in the back that, when you put it in reverse, it shows you what's behind you. And what showed on that screen was the scene from The Exorcism of Emily Rose, where the woman is walking through the cemetery.
Oh, and the DVD was out of the computer or whatever. She had taken it out.
She's taken it out, and they, put it in drive and got the heck out of there as fast as possible.
Wow.
And I took down, I specifically asked her the year, make, and model of that vehicle, and I called the company and talked to them about the DVD player that showed in the back, and the backup system, and asked if those two systems were connected in any way, and if they could show, if somebody put a DVD player in the player in the back, would it show in the front? And they said no, those systems are completely disconnected. They don't connect.
Wow.
That couldn't physically possibly happen.
Wow. That's crazy. Well, that's really paranormal. Boy, I love those stories. Wow. So that place is pretty active then. Is it very popular, that location?
It's popular. Kids go out there all the time just to spook themselves. There are some paranormal investigators who've gone out there. There was a movie done in the past few years about Workman Chapel. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head though.
So this cemetery is no longer used?
Oh, the chapel's no longer used. The cemetery, people are still buried there.
Oh, they are?
Yes, it's still mowed, and every time I've gone out there, there've been fresh flowers on certain graves. So yes, the cemetery's still taken care of.
Oh, so okay, so is this a public cemetery? Is it a private cemetery?
It's private, but all cemeteries are private. As soon as anybody can generally go to any cemetery, but as long as it's between dawn and dusk. As soon as it turns dark, you're trespassing if you're in any cemetery.
Oh yeah.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Well, in California, that's a law here in California.
Right. I think it probably should be. I think it's probably across the board. I had gotten permission a number of years ago from the caretaker that I could take people out there.
Oh, that's nice.
That's one of the things I like to cover my butt as much as possible.
So what's the oldest grave? What's the oldest tombstone?
Oh, you know what? I've never looked for that. There are some from the people that were born in the 1800s, but probably 1901 when the chapel was built. That would have to be. Yeah. I haven't personally seen somebody who died in 1901 out there, but that would be the earliest. Again, since that's when the chapel was built, that's when the cemetery was founded.
So they still have burials there, but they and I know you said that the chapel is no longer, and I have a picture of inside of the chapel, but why did they let that happen?
What, the chapel?
The chapel.
Stop?
Yeah. Why did they let that happen?
Well, when the chapel was founded, there were lots of family farms out in that area, and that's generally the case in the Midwest. It probably is all across the country. That there were when it was more of an agrarian society, there were family farms everywhere. So there were enough farmers and their families, within close enough distance to reach church Sunday mornings, and whenever else they used the chapel. But by the 1950s, family farms had already started to dwindle, and people started moving to the cities, and there weren't enough people out there to justify having a church.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, I mean, it's the same type of thing that happened with 1 and 2 room schoolhouses that were had littered the countryside at one point. There just weren't enough people remaining out there in the countryside to support it.
So what bothers me is if this property is privately owned and they had this chapel, why didn't they just preserve it and keep it as a museum, or for a historic, for other people to look at it?
Again, I mean, when it stopped. They stopped holding services in 1950. I mean, probably nothing anybody thought about. I mean, we can think back now and think, it'd be, kind of cool if this was, some kind of museum. But, by now the building's so dilapidated.
Oh, yeah,
it really needs to be torn down.
Well, that's too bad. I really hate to see these old buildings go in disrepair and then eventually it'll fall down. And it's really too bad because that's all part of our history,
Right.
Okay, so, this one, the Elms Hotel.
Hey, the Elms Resort Hotel and Spa in Excelsior Springs, Missouri. Yeah, Excelsior Springs is named Springs because they, when the town was founded, it was founded around mineral water springs. They had a mineral water bottling company there for a long time. People, when the Elms was built in
1890.
1890, 1890.
Yeah.
People, that's what they founded things on. Come for the healing mineral water baths. There were people, presidents were there, actors, actresses. I believe the Chicago Bears at one point did a training camp in Excelsior Springs just so they could take advantage of the healing water, the healing mineral waters. I believe FDR had gone there at one point for the mineral waters. But it has, a lot of tragedies in its history. It burned twice. Oh, I'm trying to think. Either 1910 or 1912 was the big fire. It was on Halloween. There was a masquerade ball, and the building caught fire. And all of the people, at the ball celebrating got out fine. They got out alive. But the people who were working the boiler room were trapped and they died.
Oh no!
And the boiler from the boiler plate. From that boiler room is mounted on display in the basement of the Elms. But there were people who died. After they rebuilt the hotel, there have been reports people banging on pipes for the last 100 years. People banging on pipes, and it's suspected that it's not the pipes clanking. It's the ghost of the people who died in that horrible fire. There were there's quite a few ghosts there. They have a European swimming pool, and a woman's child drowned in that pool, and people report seeing a woman walking around the pool, the ghost of a woman looking for her child. I think my favorite ghost, if I can say favorite ghost, an Elvis impersonator in the late 70s had a heart attack and died in the Elms Hotel, and people have reported seeing the king, well, the fake king, walking through the hotel and disappearing through a wall that used to be a door to a stage.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. When I was 21 years old, I bartended at the Elms Resort Hotel, and although I didn't see a ghost, every time I had to restock the bar, I had to go downstairs, and it was really creepy. There were also a lot of really cool historic things that happened there. They used to hold gambling there because Al Capone would come down from Chicago and stay at the Elms Hotel, and he had gambling rooms, and there was one specific room that he stayed in. So there are reports of ghostly activities in that room. Have you ever seen the picture of Harry Truman holding up the Chicago Tribune that said Dewey defeats Truman?
I saw that picture, but I didn't put it in the pictures for tonight. What was that all about?
Well, it has nothing to do with a haunting. It's just the fact that on the night of the election, he stayed at the Elms Hotel.
Oh. So
the next morning, when that paper came out, he was standing on the back of a train in Excelsior Springs, where the Elms is. The more modern type things. There's I can't remember the name of the room. I can't remember the number of the room.
Was it 505? Is it 505?
It could be 500. I was thinking 502, but it's probably 500. It's been a while since I wrote.
I think it was 505.
Okay,
I'm not sure. That when I did the notes, I was reading them, but I can't, But one of those hotels that you were going to talk about, there was a room 505. So I don't know.
That's probably
maybe the Savoy.
That's the Savoy. But the one in the Elms during one of its revamp, when they were restoring it, again, it's been done a number of times in the 1980s. The person from the company who bought it, when he was in town, he would stay in this one specific room, and he'd stay there for a week, then he'd leave for a month, come back, stay for a week, leave for a month, and when he was gone, the front desk operator would get ceaseless calls from the room that he stayed in, but he wasn't there. And she'd send somebody from custodial up to take a look, and nobody was ever in the room. Oh. But the phone would keep ringing.
Really? So did anybody ever pick it up? There was no one there when they picked it up?
There was just nothing there. Nothing there at all.
That's weird. Wow. So is that room being used today?
Yeah, it's just a regular room.
Wow. Okay. Royce sent me a message. My mod Royce sent me a message. Okay. So there was a movie, I guess, that was made on the Monkey Kid, on the story of that kid. The Booth, who the Booth brothers are. And then Royce also said something about the Devil's Backbone. I don't remember. Was that in the cave? Was there a cave named Devil's Backbone?
That could be. There could be a room in the cave.
Yeah.
Again, I wrote Haunted Missouri back in 2007.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm some of the details, like the names of the rooms, are escaping me.
Yeah. He said that it goes back to the floor of the cave. The ceiling, the stalactite that goes up to ceiling turns, comes back to the floor of the cave, looks like skeletons' backbones, and then several divers died in that cave. I'm sure that I went through that cave. Yeah, pretty scary. Okay, let's see what's next. All right. Okay, so this is very interesting. The Battle of Wilson Creek.
Right, that is in actually just south of Springfield, Missouri. It was a Civil War site. There are, I don't have many stories from that, but it's some of the stories are kind of Gettysburg-esque. If you're there in a spot alone, sometimes you can hear cannons going off. I think because I had a hard time getting people talking to me about this, but one of the workers finally told me this story, that there was there's a building that's still there that was a general store, and it was also the postmaster's house. And the postmaster's family, if I remember right,
is it called the Ray House?
It could be the postmaster. I believe they'd gotten killed, and there was this has been back probably in the 1980s. Some people were there just touring the battlefield site, and they'd gone by the house, and there was a girl of about 16 years old walking through a trail that was cut in the grass that went from the house down to a well house. She was holding a bucket to go get the water, and they were marveling at how much this, the period costume of this girl was just pristine. It was perfect. And when they were leaving, they stopped in and told the workers that whatever reenactors you have out there, they look terrific. And the workers were like, we don't have any reenactors out there today. So the daughter of the postmaster that had been killed is apparently still walking around out in Wilson's Creek.
Wasn't that the start of the Civil War in Missouri? That Wilson Creek battle?
I don't remember.
Okay. And then, let's see.
I've lived here all my life. I'm holding a Missouri Tigers cup right here. And I don't remember what the first battle was.
And let's see, they call it the Wilson Creek Battle because the troops had to cross that creek. And don't they also call it the Bull Run?
Possibly. Like I said, I wrote Haunted Missouri 11 years ago. I don't remember. I don't remember all the little details.
Okay, and there's all right. Let's see, and then there's some of the battlefield. Now there was the fallen leader was Nathaniel Lyon, and they have a memorial on that site, and they also have a marker for where he was killed on that property. And then they also somebody did a drawing on the death of Nathaniel Lyon, and they don't have a picture obviously, but somebody did a sketch of it. And I thought I read that this was the start of and there's a that this was the start of the Civil War in Missouri. I mean, that's I thought that's what I read.
Okay. It could have been. There are a lot of Civil War battle sites.
But I mean, this battle
Missouri
was really bloody, wasn't it? It was a really bloody and horrible battle that they were fighting here.
Well, I think a lot of them were. That one was. There was.
Was there like 1,500 people? I think soldiers were killed during that battle.
That's a lot.
Yeah, they said what I read was a really it was really bad. It was a really bad battle, and so go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no, I'm just saying there are a lot of Civil War battle sites that have hauntings in Missouri. One of my favorites is Lone Jack, Missouri, which is just east of Kansas City, Missouri. The town of Lone Jack was, overrun by Confederate.
Okay, hold on for a minute. Wait a minute. I have Lone Jack. I didn't add that. Hold on. Let me see if I can get a picture of Lone Jack. I need to get rid of some of these pictures. I don't have much room left on here. So before we go to Lone Jack, why don't we talk about, because I do have Bone Hill Cemetery set up.
Okay, Bone Hill Cemetery is by Buckner, Missouri, which is east of Independence, Missouri, which is where Harry Truman spent a lot of his life. There was, when white settlers came, they found this hill. They called it Bone Hill because animals, mostly like American bison, deer, other type of wildlife, were taken there to be processed by the local Native American tribes, and bones were just left there to be bleached, being bleached by the sun, and that's why it was called Bone Hill. And they eventually put a cemetery on it. The haunting legend is a farmer owned the land that the cemetery was later put on, and he built a wall of stone that's still there. And during the Civil War, there was something called Order 11, General Order 11, where anybody who was a Confederate sympathizer had to either renounce their Confederate sympathies and declare that they supported the Union, or they'd be thrown in jail. And a lot of people got thrown in jail. But the guy who owned the land decided, I don't want any part of this. I'm just going to leave. So he packed up his family and moved away, and he was going to come back after the war was over. Well, the legend is he buried some of his wealth along the stone wall that he built. And he had said, I'll come back in 7 years, and he left and again never came back. Well, legend is that every 7 years, if you're there on the right night, I don't know what the right night was. I went there, nobody showed up. But apparently a light will appear that's supposedly this farmer's lantern trying to look for his lost treasure. There have been people out there with metal detectors for decades, and nobody's found anything.
Really? Okay. Is that all you can say about that? I'm trying to get this picture.
That's about all there is, other than the fact that I don't put a whole lot of stock in photographs of anything paranormal, because I've been a photographer for a long time, and there's generally a logical explanation for them. But when it comes to Bone Hill, I took a picture, and there is, right in the middle, a blurry spot. And I have no idea what it was.
Wow.
Much like the energy ribbon that was around the one girl at Workman Chapel. I have no idea what this out of focus spot is. It's right in the middle.
Yeah, I saw that. Picture. Yeah, I saw that picture. All right, I have some pictures of the Battle of Lone Jack. Let me hold on. I just got a couple more I would like to put in. Okay. All right, go ahead. If you want to start talking, then I can finish putting the rest of the pictures in.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't have a whole lot. The Battle of Lone Jack was pretty bloody. It went back and forth between Confederate controlling the town and the Union controlling the town. Killed hundreds of people and about as many horses as well. So it was extremely bloody. Ghost stories have been around for not too long after the war. People would report seeing campfires out on the battlegrounds, and when they'd go to inspect the campfires to see who was camping out on the battleground, the campfires would go out and there'd be nobody there, no evidence of a fire whatsoever. And this went on up until the 80s, when a lot of the battleground was turned into housing developments, which is unfortunate. But this person, this volunteer, a docent who worked at the Battle of Lone Jack historic site, was telling me a story of a man he knew who lived in one of those houses, and his son, who was about 5 or 6 years old, wanted to play a game of jacks. And he never showed his son jacks, and nobody plays jacks anymore.
Oh.
And he said, well, where did you learn how to play this? Because the boy described how to play jacks, and he said, well, the man in the gray jacket who comes into my room showed me how to do it.
Wow.
So they eventually moved out of that house, but they were pretty convinced that the ghost of a Confederate soldier was talking to his son.
Oh.
I think one of the more fun stories is back in the late 60s, early 1970s, Interstate 70 came through that area and came through just north of Lone Jack, and you can see it from where the battlefield was. And they had to cut through some hills to go through that area. And I interviewed a man who did, and he probably still does, reenactments. And he showed up late one day for a reenactment, and as he walked his horse into camp and tied it up, he was asking everybody where this other reenactor was, because it was a friend of his, and he was wanting to know if he was going to be there that day. And they're like, we haven't seen him. Well, he got up in the middle of the night. Something woke him up, and he looked outside, and there were some people, because they keep watching reenactments. This is a real deal. They do the whole the battles. This is actually going to happen. So he saw some people keeping watch around a fire, but he also saw who he thought he was his friend getting on a horse, and he yelled at his friend and waved, and his friend didn't say anything, and then his friend just rode his horse past him up a hill and disappeared on the other side of the hill. And he thought, that's really weird. So he went back to sleep. When we got up, he looked where his buddy had ridden his horse over the hill, and that hill didn't exist anymore because I-70 had been destroyed for I-70 to come through.
Wow. So
he had seen a hill that hadn't been there for years.
Wow, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. What about what is there's a story about this cave hotel. What's that all about?
About what?
Cave hotel.
Cave, C-A-V-E hotel?
Yeah.
I have never heard of that.
Oh, yeah.
Where is this?
It's on that property. It's on that property.
In Lone Jack?
Yeah, in Lone Jack. In fact, it's a museum now. And there's a story about Lone Jack on that. But yeah, like I said, I don't have my notes. There's a story about that hotel.
I'll have to look into that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess my only other tidbit about Lone Jack. Did you ever see the Rooster Cogburn movie, the John Wayne movie?
Oh, honey, years ago.
Yes, that's where he lost his eye, at the Battle of Lone Jack.
Oh.
Of course, he's a fictional character, but growing up in Missouri, I always thought that was neat that Rooster Cogburn lost his eye at the Battle of Lone Jack.
Well, that's all I have. We did just about. There was 2 we didn't do of the list that you sent me, but it's been over an hour, and I know you have your family and your little girl. Anyway, Jason, thanks again. I don't know, is this 3 or 4 times you've been on the show? I love having you on the show and listening to your stories.
It's been at least 3. It might have been 4, but I know for sure it's been 3.
Yeah.
And thank you. I appreciate being on the show. Thanks for the invitation.
Oh gosh, you're quite welcome. And let's see. So everybody, you can go to Jason's website, and I really urge you to go. JasonOffutt.com. I'm telling you, he's got some fabulous books that he's written, and he has a lot of awesome stories, and you can find him. All you have to do is put his name in, and you'll find a bunch of stories on the web that he has written, and some of them are the ones that he talked about tonight. He's awesome. And Jason, I want to thank you so much. How many books did you write?
My 14th book came out last month, and number 15 is called Chasing American Monsters. It's another paranormal book, and it's coming out March 8th.
What's that one about?
I went through all 50 states looking for monsters particular to that state. And, I've got a book on 251 monsters from all 51 states.
Wow.
Not 51 states, 50 states. What am I talking about?
In doing these shows, every time you turn around, there's another monster that somebody is talking about, Well, Goat Man is famous. That's, but there's like Lizard Man, Pig Face. There's all kinds of monsters that people are. The list seems to keep growing and growing. Did you find that out when you were writing that book?
I did, and all the ones you just mentioned are in the book. And the Pig Man, I think he's from Vermont, and there are Goat Man sightings from Virginia, and
Wisconsin,
Kentucky,
Wisconsin,
Wisconsin,
yeah.
Missouri, Texas. The Fort Worth monster is, I think, the most famous goat man encounter. And there's lots of great monsters. I think my favorite might be Bat Squatch from
yes.
Washington.
Yes, I think it was Linda Godfrey who wrote on Bat Squatch. Yeah, that's hey, would you want to come? You know, I'm full for the rest of the year, but next year when I start my calendar, would you come back and let's do some monsters out of that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it comes out in March, so anytime around there would be terrific.
Oh, awesome! I'll write you down. Thanks, honey. And you know what? You're fabulous. You're a great writer. I've read some of your stories on the web, and it's always a pleasure to have you on the show, Jason. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's always a pleasure to be on. I really appreciate the invitation.
Thank you very much. You have a great evening and a great weekend.
As well.
Thank you. Well, everybody, I hope you enjoyed the show. I will have Jason back. Oh, that next book he has sounds really awesome. Let's see. Let me do this. Let me get back onto the website here. So everybody, thanks. We had a nice crowd tonight. Thank you so much for joining. Oh wow! All my mods are here today. Yay! Royce Hinman, Unique Andy, and Crystal Triple. Hey, thanks so much, guys, for being here. And also, everybody, thanks to the mods. We have a wonderful chat room. If it wasn't for them, it would be miserable, because there are a lot of people that come in they like to cause a lot of issues. But we have great mods, and they really make it pleasant for you when you come in to chat. So thank you for Royce, Annie, and Crystal. I love you guys. And I want to tell you too that with the money that I got, and thank you so much with Super Chat, I bought a new printer, and my printer was so bad. It was a refurbished one, and it was really bad, and it just, I couldn't use it anymore. And so I went down, and I had all my notes done. I went down, I got my new printer, and there just wasn't enough time to print all my notes off for tonight. But I'll be ready next week. And I'm going to do some shout outs. And so those that gave me Super Chat money, I bought a new printer. And another thing is I'm so excited about is I bought a new camera. The camera was really, really expensive, but it's 4K. And the if I can get it set up, the video that the live video should be more movie-like quality, and that was very, very expensive. But the only reason I bought it was because I was able to make payments. The company that was selling it, they had several to sell, allowed me to make payments, so that's why I bought it. So I'm really excited. I hope that the next show, I don't know if I can have it up by Thursday. I may have to get my techie Robert to come over and help me. But the quality should be super, like movie quality, which I'm hoping for. Anyway, so everybody, thanks so much. Everybody's leaving, and I wanted to give some shout outs. So let me see. Oh, Royce, okay. Was Dave there? Royce, was Dave in the show tonight? Did Dave show up? Anyway, okay, so Dave was in for about 5 minutes. All right. Oh, and thank you, Jordan Perkins. Thank you so very much for your donation on Super Chat. I will put that money toward the payments for that video camera. And thank you so much. So let's do some shout outs. Okay, so let's see. Shout outs to Carl White, Graham Crosby, Anvil Hammer, Aaron Brody, Adelaide Burgess, Beat 3 Airspace, Kathy Cilantro Chandelier, Chippeteri, Crystal Triplet, Donna White, Ginger's Sweet Reborns, Kayla Spears, Katie Palma, Leah Parda, I'm sorry, Leo Pardesta, that's it, Lumpy Space Princess, Nancy, Paranormal Pixies 78, Paranormal Zone TV, that's me, Red Shark, Royce, Hinman, Tammy Heitzman, Unique Annie, Zoe Small. So I guess Dave was in. Dave, if you're still here, thank you. So let me see, did I forget anybody? Michelle Pappas, Shelly Sykes, Reba Baden, Shelly Michelle, Nebet Seda. Who else? We had a big crowd and everybody's dropping off. Crystal, honey, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you. And Tammy Heitzman, thank you, honey. Oh, thank you. Thank you. My gosh, thanks. Well, so I just want you to know that I don't take vacations on the money that you guys give me. I put it toward a new camera, which is, I'm praying that it's going to really do what I want it to do, and my new printer. So thank you so much. And Crystal Triplet, thank you. Okay, so did I miss somebody? Anybody? Did I miss anybody? Okay, anybody else want to shout out? Zoe Small. Anybody else want to shout out? JB64, Jen Young, Katie Palmer, Loopy Space Princess, Reba Baden, Red Shark. Anybody else? Yvette Sanchez. I think Sandra Amador was in earlier too. X Group Home Kid, Dr. Jackalope. Anybody else? I know we had way over 100 people tonight. Anyway, okay, so listen. Next Thursday is Andrea Perrin. She wanted to come back. I had her scheduled in October, I think it was, but she sent me a message. She says, I want to come earlier. So I changed dates with someone, and so she's coming next Thursday, and we're going to talk about aliens and UFOs, and she's also going to talk about the government, how they're keeping it a secret from us, and I think Andrea's written a book on aliens as well. So anyway, that's what the show's going to be on, and so hope to see you guys next week. Again, I want to thank you all so much for being here. It was I just love having everybody here, and thank you so much. Oh, let me see. Do I have a message from Royce? Oh, Red Spark. Did I give you the shout out? Red Spark, Adelaide Borges, Brazil. Okay, anybody? Did I miss anybody else? Okay, guys, I'm going to go have dinner now with my husband. I made a delicious dinner, and I'm ready to eat it. So everybody, thank you so much. Thank you all for the super chat money. Again, I just want you to know that money is going toward the equipment, and I spent a lot of money, but I want to have good shows. So I love you guys. Have a great weekend. It's so hot here. And I'll see you all. Oh, please, also positive prayers, positive energy to Royce. We need to keep him healthy. He isn't doing that well, and he needs our prayers and our positive energy. Please, always send that to Royce. Please, we need our Royce. as well as we need our Crystal and we need our unique Annie too, and all you in chat. I love you guys. Group hug, love you guys. Skanky Juju. All right, I'm gonna go now, and let's see. Anybody? Did I miss anybody? All right, I think I'm okay. All right, love you guys. I'll see you next week, and you have a great and safe weekend. Love you guys. Thank you. Good night. Love you.